Alright, so here we are again. This is part 2 of the bacteria lectures. Part 1 involved just the structure and function, or the common structures and functions of bacteria. And again, bacteria are very diverse, so we're concentrating on all the commonalities here. For this video, I want you to be able to describe how bacteria reproduce. Also, describe 2 ways that genetic variation can be created in populations of bacteria. And then finally, describe 2 ways that infections of bacteria cause humans to feel sick. So all 3 of those objectives will be covered. First one, how do bacteria actually reproduce? They use this process called binary fission. And this is a form of asexual reproduction that resembles mitosis in a lot of ways. And as a result of binary fission, 2 new bacteria are produced from one mother cell. And these bacteria are genetically identical to that parent cell. And here's a quick rundown. You start with a parent cell, and this is that nucleoid, that tightly coiled DNA that's not in a nucleus. Before division happens, the DNA in this nucleoid is replicated, and here we have 2 identical copies of that DNA strands, and the cell is beginning to divide. And the cell divides in half, the cytoplasm pinches in half, and you have 2 genetically identical daughter cells. So it resembles mitosis in a lot of ways, but this is asexual reproduction, and that means that these daughter cells are going to be genetically identical to the parent cell. And if you remember our lessons from evolution, you would realize that that's a big problem, because a species need to evolve in response to a changing environment, and they can't do so unless there's genetic variation in the population. And how can you have genetic variation when the parents, when the offspring are always identical to the parents? The population will never change through time. So how do bacteria get this genetic variation when they're not using sexual reproduction like us? Well, the first way is mutation, and this is just when DNA is copied before binary fission and mistakes are made in the cell, and this happens all the time. So this mutates or changes that DNA sequence. Okay, so that's one way that bacteria can get genetic variation. Another way is through what's called conjugation, and this really resembles sexual reproduction, but it's still a lot different. This is when 2 bacteria cells line up next to one another, and here we are down here, these 2 bacteria cells lining up to one another, and they use these structures that are sticking out from their surface called pili, and these pili are kind of like little tubes or tunnels, and if one pili attaches to another bacteria, then these plasmids can be exchanged. And remember, these plasmids are just pieces of DNA, and they contain genes. So this is one way that bacteria can exchange their genes, and this could reshuffle genes and lead to new genetic variation. So mutation and conjugation. And finally, our final objective for bacteria: how do they make us sick? Well, a lot of the time, well, first of all, bacteria that form parasitic relationships with other organisms are usually called pathogens, and pathogens are it's just a general term for an agent that can make us sick or feel ill. Pathogenic bacteria cause a lot of different diseases, and I have them listed right here: tetanus, typhoid fever, diphtheria. We're not really familiar with these, but there's some other ones we might be familiar with, especially foodborne illness. Anytime you read on the news about people getting foodborne illness from produce, especially, that's usually caused by bacteria like salmonella or E. coli. But how does this happen? How do these make us sick? Well, these pathogenic bacteria, our body recognizes these as invaders, and there's an immune response, and our body's defense systems attack the bacteria. And this process of defending ourselves, our white blood cells of our immune system fight away these pathogens, and this results in swelling, pain, and warmth and tenderness around those areas of infection. And those are common signs of infection, and those feelings can make us feel sick. And also, so sometimes the immune system, the response itself from the immune system, is what makes us feel sick. Also, some pathogenic bacteria can actually produce proteins that damage cells and tissues of the host, and these proteins are called toxins. And these toxins can make us feel quite ill as well. And in turn, the body's immune response is going to respond to those toxins. It's going to further damage and inflame tissue, and it's going to make us feel weak and sick as well. So those are two primary reasons why we feel sick when bacteria infect our bodies. And that is it for bacteria. Tomorrow will be vaccines and antibiotics.